Hey everyone, I stumbled across a very nice game played between Leela Chess Zero and Komodo, played the other day in a CCC11 round 2 with 30 minutes on the clock each and a 5-second increment. And this actually is a Kings Gambit game where Leela's playing white and Komodo plays black. So in the game, white played e4, black played e5, and Leela played f4. So these are actually book moves at the moment. So in the game it went e takes f4, knight to f3, and black played h5, d4 and g5, and g5 was actually the end of the book move. So how did Leela continue? Well, first of all she decided to try and break up this pawn structure. Already Stockfish actually gives white as the advantage in this position already. Probably because black's overextended and their king could be relatively weak in this position. So Leela played h4, so undermining this g5 square. And black has maybe f6 to try and support this pawn, but I think they opted for the better move g4. So after this move by Komodo, Leela played knight to g5. And this is a bit of a weird move because knight g5 actually loses the knight straight away. So after Komodo plays f6, this knight is suddenly stranded. So why has Leela done this? White is already a pawn down. But it seems as though white gets a really good initiative, because after the next move, bishop takes f4, white's regained their pawn, f takes g5, bishop takes g5, and attacking the queen. White's now a pawn up and a piece down, but actually white gets a lot of activity. And black's king is opened up really nicely for white to attack. For instance, if white just develops the bishop and maybe castles king's side, they've already got 2 pieces into the attack straight away, and it's very quick. So bishop e7 is pretty much forced by Komodo, and Leela played queen to d2. So what would happen if now black captures this bishop? Well, I've gone through a long variation with Stockfish, but actually bishop takes g5, h takes g. And let's say black plays d6. Well, white can continue with knight to c3. Black can continue with bishop to e6. And after bishop d3, knight to e7, castles queenside and black develops. Suddenly white now gains a really quick attack. They can play the move e5, opening things up, possibly preparing even d5. So if black takes this pawn and white recaptures, if black tries to gain equality with knight c5, white's got moves like queen f4, and now bishop g6 is threatened with a discovered attack. Also white can play queen f6 straight away as well, attacking this bishop, attacking this rook. So the king is really open for black. For instance, if queen c8, which was recommended, then white plays bishop e4, rook f8, queen e3, and suddenly white's attacking the knight on c5, the pawn on h5, and if takes, knight f6 is a really nice square for white's knight. And yes, white is still a piece down, but you take white's position over black's any day here, because the queen is offside here, the rook is offside, and white's got all their pieces into the attack. The threatening moves like rook takes h5, and yeah, you just probably would prefer to play white in this position, no doubt. But back to the actual game, Komodo played knight to f6 instead of capturing the bishop, so threatening knight takes e4. Leela plays knight c3 to defend, and Komodo plays knight h7 with 3 pieces now hitting this bishop. So Leela's forced to trade, bishop takes e7, queen takes e7, and Leela plays e5, ready to play bishop d3 and use this nice diagonal. So maybe e5 can be exploited with d6, but actually white can castle queenside, and after d takes e5, white will play bishop to b5 check, and if c6, they'll again ignore this and just play rook h e1 and use this open file to attack the queen and king. So this would have been a nice way to play this if black decided to play d6. However, they didn't. Komodo played king to d8, getting off the e-file and any bishop g6 threats. Leela plays knight d5 though, hitting the queen on e7. The queen moves to e6. And now white plays c4 to support the knight. So this is very nice play so far. Komodo plays knight c6 to develop another piece and try and get some defence in order. And now Leela plays a really nice move actually. bishop to d3, giving up the d4 pawn. Komodo accepts this d4 pawn. So why did Leela do this? Well, now she just castles kingside and now gets the rook into the game, and this becomes a very powerful rook in the position. So for instance, if black continues with queen takes e5, rook a e1 will be played, and the queen is really suffering now for black. It's lacking a lot of squares. Queen g3, and then white can play queen to c3, attacking the knight on d4. c5 defends, but then now white can play rook e3, and after queen takes h4 there's lots of threats for white. g3, queen g5, and now white can play bishop takes h7 with back rank mate threats. For instance, if the rook captured, there'd be rook f8 mate. So back to this position where white has just castled, I was thinking maybe knight c6 to move the knight backwards and stop any bishop takes h7 discovered attacks. But actually bishop takes h7 anyway, and again this threat of rook f8 is coming in. So this castling move by Leela makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of attacking ideas behind it. In the game though, Komodo decided to give up the knight f3 check, and just try and get some sort of equality by giving back the material. So Leela kindly accepts, she takes, black takes, and white takes on f3. So the material now is actually equal, and white's king is somewhat been opened up as well. Komodo checks on g4, and white plays queen g2, and there's a trade of queens, knight to f8, and rook to f7. And even though white does have the advantage, it would seem, because of the more active pieces, the material is now equal, and if black can just develop this bishop to say bishop b7 and get the rook out on a8, they have a good fighting chance of equalising the game. So a5 was played by Komodo, but Leela just continues the pressure, rook a f1, hitting the knight, so the knight is forced to move to e6, and now bishop to f5. And the plan behind this move is that the bishop will take on e6, and after the pawn recaptures, the c7 pawn will be susceptible to an attack with knight takes c7. So rook a6 was played. So luckily now Komodo has actually got one of their pieces out. And Leela continues with a casual move, king f2. So what is Leela's plan? I believe she's trying to get her king into the centre, maybe up to king e4, where they'll have a significant advantage in the endgame. Komodo played knight d4, hitting the bishop on f5, and king e3 from Leela, attacking the knight. And Komodo took on f5, the rook takes on f5, and Komodo played rook to e6. However, Leela now uncovers some great tactics. She plays rook h5. The point is that this rook f8 move still exists. So after rook takes h5, Leela checks on f8, and the only move now is to block with rook to e8. Oh no, maybe Leela's made a mistake. Maybe it's she's missed that the rook can block it. Well no, because after rook takes e8, black takes, and there's a fork with knight to f6. After king e7, knight takes h5. Leela actually emerges from the middle game with a pawn up, and now she has an h pawn, that's a pass pawn, and this should be a really easy way to win the game. So after b6 we see this nice h pawn, and the point is that now white's just going to roll this pawn down the board, and this should be their key to victory. Knight to f4 was played, so covering the e6 and g6 squares against the king, and the pawn on e5 also does a good job of covering the other two squares, so white's just creating a little barrier between the pawn and the king. Black played c6, h5 by Leela, bishop b7, and now h6. So all of a sudden after h6, Komodo's got to start trying to go after this pawn. So king f7 and knight to h5 from Leela. Komodo plays king to g6, so it looks like they're going to win the pawn on h6. But Leela can play knight to f6. And the point is that now if black takes the pawn, white will take on d7, and after king g7, white's got e6. And again, white's just made an invisible barrier against the king. So the knight protects these two squares and the pawn also protects this square. And it's impossible for black to get to this pawn. Even after bishop c8, white will just play king e4, and this is a very easy win for white. So after knight to f6, Komodo can't take the pawn. They instead play bishop to c8, and now Leela just plays h7, with the knight protecting the pawn very nicely. King g7 is forced, and now Leela played king to d4. a4 was played by Komodo, c5 from Leela, b5, and now king c3. And actually Komodo should probably resign the game right here because it's game over. The point is that the king is just going to waltz in to c7 and start capturing the pawn on d7, followed by the bishop. A very easy win now. Even an amateur player could probably win this position, I would say. So Komodo played b4 check, king takes b4 was played, bishop a6, and king takes a4. So now Leela is 3 pawns up in an endgame, and also attacking d7. Bishop e2 was played, knight takes d7, and now king takes h7. Even though black's captured this outside pass pawn, it's too little too late. King a5, king g7, and king b6. After king f7, white just cleans up and wins the c6 pawn. And I'll play through the next couple of moves relatively quickly. There's actually 40 of them, which is a bit unnecessary. But slowly, yet, Leela just gets another pass pawn and gets a queen. And Komodo should probably resign here. But Leela does this thing where she doesn't checkmate straight away. She sort of plays with the opponent. I'm not sure why she does this. It's very unusual. But if I just play them through the moves, Leela actually gets another queen and sacks it for no apparent reason. So I'm not sure if this is a bug or if she just plays this way to troll the opponent. But yeah, she sacks another queen, and finally she'll deliver mate at some point. Yep, queen a1, checkmate. So to be honest, those last 40 moves were rather unnecessary, and Leela actually cleaned up the game, I would say, when she played the move h7 in this position. This is a win now for white. But I just thought this was a very interesting and exciting game. Obviously I think the book screwed Komodo over, who was playing as black, but nonetheless it was still a very enthralling game, and there was a lot of ideas behind it. So I'll post a link below of where I found it on chess.com, and I'll copy and paste the analysis into the description so you can put it into ChessBase if you wish to analyse the game yourself. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed my analysis of this game. If you did, please drop me a like, it makes a lot of difference, and yeah, subscribe if you haven't already, and maybe even hit the notification button because I will be posting a lot of chess videos very soon, and hoping to help you guys out with your own chess problems as well. Anyway, I'll see you next time.